half a century success of the African Union has significant ties to the success of Ethiopia and its national carrier, Ethiopian Airlines. In the early 60s, a wave of Pan Africanism was spreading across the continent. Along with it came the idea of establishing a continental body that would serve as the instrument of change and the voice of a united Africa. 2 decades earlier, before the establishment of the OAU, Ethiopia established an airline in a joint venture with Trans World Airlines. It was a bold, albeit humble beginning that would change the aviation industry in Africa. Ethiopian made in flight to Cairo in 1946, in one of its 5 DC-47s, ushered in an era of prominence, an African airline with weekly services to destinations in Africa and beyond, with unparalleled operational excellence. Along the way, the green, yellow, and red livery of Ethiopian across the African skies came to symbolize an independent Africa. Ethiopian soon became the sole operator to many African countries as they broke free from the yoke of colonialism. To this day, many of the celebrations of Ethiopian inaugural flights to African destinations coincide with the years those countries gained their independence. Indeed, Ethiopian had already started bringing Africa together, working towards the unity of the continent, as the OAU later would. It was on board Ethiopian Airlines that the founding fathers of the OAU traveled across the continent to negotiate its vision and birth. Then came the realization of a dream. In May 1963, leaders of 32 African nations gathered in Addis Ababa to sign the charter establishing the OAU and to herald a new chapter in the unity and solidarity of Africa. It was also on Ethiopian that many of the leaders traveled to Addis for this historic event. As Addis first solidified its position as the continent's political and diplomatic capital, Ethiopian began serving as the presidential airline for many African nations, carrying heads of state to subsequent OAU assemblies. At the same time, realizing that a true African airline should be managed by Africans, Ethiopian established its own Aviation Academy. This academy proved instrumental for many African nations in establishing their own airlines. The academy, on top of training skilled manpower for Ethiopian, opened its doors for trainees from other African countries. It was through this academy that Ethiopian assisted these countries technically or offered advice in developing the necessary human resources. Throughout its existence, a third of aviation professionals graduating from Ethiopian Aviation Academy have been from other African countries, bringing about people-to-people and economic ties between nations. After the establishment of more African airlines, Ethiopian took to the forefront in 1968, spearheading the formation of the African Airlines Association. It still serves as a platform for establishing best practices and bringing airlines together to work for common goals. All the while, Ethiopian's fleet was growing. With it, the need for a technical facility where maintenance and repair could be done in-house also grew. Backed by skilled professionals, born out of its own training academy, Ethiopian launched maintenance, repair, and overhaul services, and it soon began offering these MRO services to other African airlines as well. Ethiopian Airlines had established itself as adept in all facets of aviation services. Its cargo business was catering to the growing demand for transportation of goods, and its Aviation Academy and MRO businesses were endowed with state-of-the-art technology, both in infrastructure and services. All these proved instrumental in realizing the OAU's own founding tenets of political and economic integration. Ethiopian provided a convenient and smooth means of bringing people, goods, and services of the continent closer together. This was true even when some African countries were embroiled in conflicts. Ethiopian was the last airline to stop operations in these countries long after many had pulled out. Even then, Ethiopian operation to some of these countries continued in a different form. It was on board Ethiopian that many of these peacekeeping forces were deployed to conflict areas in Africa. The turn of this century saw global prominence of Africa and its renaissance taking root. In 2002, the OAU was restructured as the African Union, setting development goals and visions for the continent of the 21st century. The African Renaissance was here, and the world noticed.
The African Renaissance that we all dreamed of is beginning to happen. Africa is rising indeed. The African Renaissance has begun, and it is within our means to keep it going. It is within our means to create a new pole of global growth in Africa, to fully stabilize our continent, and to make sure that it takes its rightful place in the global scheme of things.
As the continent grew, Ethiopians stepped up to the challenge, crafting visions and goals for the long term, consistent with the vision of the AU and its development arm, NEPAD. After fulfilling its initial motto of bringing Africa together, Ethiopian was ready for a new one. Having fulfilled its initially 5-year plan called Vision 2010, Ethiopian chose the new spirit of Africa as its motto for serving the Africa of tomorrow. This enabled Ethiopian to serve the ever-increasing number of African passengers that resulted from a booming continent. Africa's growth also demanded a sophisticated level of operations. Ethiopian set up a second hub in Lome, Togo, establishing a community airline called ASKAI to cater to West Africa. This was the birth of the multi-hubbing concept, which further enhanced Ethiopian operations in Africa. ASKAI is not only serving passengers in West Africa, but also feeding passengers to Ethiopian through its main hub in Addis Ababa for longer-haul transatlantic routes. By 2011, Ethiopian had expanded its reach by becoming a member of Star Alliance, the world's biggest and most prestigious airline alliance. Passengers on Ethiopian now have access to 1,293 airports in 193 countries. Ethiopian is now truly a global airline. With such capabilities, Ethiopian's passenger service now caters to 72 destinations worldwide, 45 of them in Africa, with a unique in-flight service that conveys the flavor of the continent. In 2012, Ethiopian spanned its intercontinental reach by launching Africa's first scheduled non-stop flight to Canada. These and other achievements have made Ethiopian a multi-award-winning airline, unparalleled in operational excellence and profit. Despite operating in a troubled industry that has seen reduced returns, Ethiopian has proven to have mastered a recipe for success. With an average growth of 25 to 30% over the past 7 years, Ethiopian is now the fastest growing airline in the continent. With the continent at the core of its operations, Ethiopian is solidifying its position as the flagship carrier of Africa. That is why the vision and strategies Ethiopian is implementing all align with the vision of the AU for the continent.
Africa is on the rise. We at Ethiopian firmly believe that the 21st century is an African century. With more than 1 billion, mostly young population, huge reserve of natural resources, rising middle-class society, attracting huge foreign direct investment, we believe that Africa is the next and perhaps the last frontier in globalization. In our Vision 2025, in the next 15 years, we are going to increase our fleet from 57 today to more than 120 airplanes by 2025, carrying more than 18 million passengers per annum and 820,000 tons of cargo to more than 90 international destinations in all the inhabited continents of the world and employing more than 17,000 employees. Air connectivity and mobility are critically essential economic engines for African transformation and African renaissance. That is why Ethiopian is betting big on Africa in its Vision 2025. And Africa's growth is important for Ethiopian, and Ethiopian is here to support African growth.
Indeed, Ethiopian Airlines is betting on Africa, as it has done since its inception, and it is betting big. This Pan-African airline is clearly the flagship carrier best positioned to lead the continent into this time of renaissance, bringing Africa to the world and the world to Africa.